three councillors, Councillor Bell, Cox, and Fryer.
Okay, so Councillor Evans, you'll be comfortable reading those motions?
Be happy to help out, Warden, any way I can. Thank
Yeah.
you.
We're live, Warden.
We are live, so I'll call the meeting to order. I'll ask you if you'll stand for a national anthem, followed by a moment of quiet contemplation. Now we'll have a moment of quiet contemplation. Okay, thank you, everybody. I don't have my headset today. I hope I'm coming in loud and clear. The weather turned out better than I anticipated, so sorry about the last minute change in the agenda. Driving last night, it was not pretty out there, so I thought we better err on the side of caution. So with that, I will look for a roll call from my clerks.
Your worship and members, currently I have Councillor Cox absent. Councillor Smith sends his regrets, and joining us today is alternate Councillor Joe Belanger.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody have to leave early today? I'm not seeing anything on this screen. One moment. Okay, then with that, I will look for approval of the agenda with Councillor Dolan.
Thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Anderson that the agenda for the February 28th, 2023 meeting of County Council be approved.
Any questions on the agenda? Scroll through. Don't have my big screen in front of me. I see none, so all in favor? That is carried. Do I have a disclosure of pecuniary interest by any member of council? I didn't see any. Okay, so with that, presentations and deputations, we have none, so I'll call upon Councillor Burkett for the consent agenda.
Thank you. Good morning, Your Worship. Through you, moved by myself, second by Councillor Bell. The council communications and proclamations February the 14th, 2023 to February 27th, 2023 having given due consideration be received.
Any questions or comments on those? All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Next, I'll go to Deputy Warden Coghlan for the adoption of the council minutes.
Thank you, Worship, and through you, moved by myself and seconded by Councillor McDonald that the following council minutes be confirmed and adopted for the Committee of the Whole reports be confirmed. County Council minutes February 14th, 2023 and Committee of the Whole report February 14th, 2023, sorry.
Okay, any questions on those minutes? I'm seeing none, so all in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Next, I have presentation and consideration of the committee of the whole report. Do I have Counselor Evans? Yes. Do you have a motion?
Thank you, your
Performance.
worship, and yes, I do. Thank you, worship, and through you. Motion is that the performance management recommendations contained within the committee of the whole report dated February 14th, 2023 be approved.
Could we have a seconder for Counselor Evans? Seconder by Counselor Ms. Kimmons? Any questions on the performance management or anything to be pulled? All in favor? That is carried. Okay. Next, I have Human Services, Counselor Leduc.
Yes, thank you, Warden. And I have a motion, the human service recommendation contained within the committee of whole report dated February 14th, 2023 be approved, moved by myself, seconded by looking for anybody. Counselor Sandu. Question, anything pulled? Seeing none, all in favor? Carrie, thank you. I turn it back to you, Warden.
Thank you, Counselor. And presentations and considerations of special reports and committees, we have none. And consideration of county's officer report, we have none today. And motions which notice has been previously given, we have none. Now, I don't recall any notices of motion. Are there any? Not seeing any. So closed session is not required. So consideration of bills, Counselor Norcross.
Your worship, can you help me out? My computer just screen just tanked on me. My apologies.
Okay, then so I would be looking at the resolution. Hang on, I gotta find it now.
Thank you, your worship.
Now I'm gonna have to ask the clerk to read it for me.
Your worship, I believe what you're looking for is that bill number 6997 be enacted as a bylaw of the county of Simcoe.
60 by law. Okay, I just have the one, but okay. Moved by Counselor Norcross. Do I have a seconder? Counselor Leduc. Questions on the bills? All in favor? Thank you. So next I have announcements. Any announcements today?
No.
Counselor Dolan.
Sorry, your worship, it was my error. There is a second bill.
Okay, here it is. Bill number 6998.
Correct.
Be read a first, second, and time on this 28th day of February 2023. Moved by Counselor Norcross, second by Counselor Fryer. Questions? All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. So now looking for announcements. Counselor Dolan, go ahead.
Thank you, worship. No, I was just going to say what the clerk said, that we had to do first and second reading for the Enbridge bill.
Okay, perfect. Yes. Any comments and or announcements? I saw a few hands before us, so there was a couple of people that were on the ball. Thank you. Okay, so the confirmatory bylaw, are you back up, Richard, or no?
No, not yet, your worship. My people's
Okay.
apologies.
So then the bill number 6999 be enacted as bylaw for the county of Simcoe, moved by Counselor Norcross, second by Counselor Locks. All in favor? That is carried. And now motion to adjourn, moved by Counselor Fowler, second by Counselor Van Staveren. All in favor? That is carried. So how long do you need, Mr. Clerk, for us to reconvene for our committee of the whole?
Your worship, if you're prepared to go into committee of the whole, we can instantly transition.
Okay, we might as well. I'll give a minute just for our Aurelia reps to turn their camera. Oh, I'm seeing them here already. So good morning, Counselor Falls. So I'll call order and I'd invite the business chair. Well, normally you'd be coming up to join me, so we won't worry about that today. So I'll ask Counselor Dolan for the approval of the agenda.
Thank you, your worship. Moved by myself and seconded by Counselor Norcross that the agenda for February 28th, 2023 meeting of the committee of the whole be approved.
Any questions or comments on the agenda? All in favor? That is carried. Next, I have disclosure of pecuniary interest by any member of council. Yes, Counselor Dolan and Counselor Ross, and I have a few here.
Thank you. Thank you, worship. Item 12.2, is from the Source Water Protection Committee that I'm chair of, and receive remuneration from the province for doing so.
Okay, and I will say, Councillor Measures, do you want to chair that portion when it comes up? Vice Chair? Yep, perfect. So we'll do that when that one comes up. I saw another sign. It was Councillor Rawson.
Thank you, Worship. Regarding Human Services 7.3 Report CCW 2023-054. I serve as the Executive Director for Helping Hands, which is a potential tenant under the active negotiation space for Relay Hub. It creates an indirect pecuniary interest for me. So I'm declaring or recuse myself from participating in that matter today.
Thank you. Any other conflicts? I'm seeing none. So with that, presentations and delegations, I have none for myself. However, I will go over to performance management and Councillor Evans.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, I have a motion, a resolution that item CCW 2023-071 dated February 28th, 2023 regarding Simcoe County Archives operations in January 2023 be received. The move by myself and seconded by Councillor Gordon.
You're actually chairing now, sir, so you'll need a mover and a seconder.
Oh, sorry, my bad. Yeah, there we go. So I need a mover, please. Councillor Gordon, I'll take you up on that, and Councillor Cotton is my seconder. Thank you. Any discussions, comments, questions? Those in favor? Those opposed? Thank you. The motion's carried. I'll pass it back to you, Gordon.
Thank you. And now I'll turn to my Chair of Human Services, Chairman Leduc.
Thank you, Warden. And we have Human Services consent agenda. So I need a mover and a seconder, please. Moved by Councillor Cotton, seconded by Councillor Evans. And we have a presentation for this. It's I'll call up GM Mina Fraz-Bagat to introduce our 211 services for presentation, please.
Thank you, Chair Leduc, and good morning, Council. I'd like to introduce the Executive Director of the Community Connections and 211 Central East Ontario, Pam Hillier, to provide a presentation on the services delivered here at Simcoe County.
Good morning. I'm going to be sharing my screen, I believe, so we'll see if we can get this all to work. It's a pleasure to be here today. And if someone can make sure that that is displaying, okay, that'd be great. Hearing nothing, does that mean you can see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay. All right, so I'm going to just go through a very short presentation on a few things to update you on our work here in Simcoe County. I'm going to start first with a video clip that was created as part of a promotional campaign created out of the Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan discussions.
Times are tough right now, and sometimes you don't know where to turn.
We answer your 911 emergency calls. But do you know about 211?
211 is a free, confidential helpline available 24/7.
211 is an easy number to remember, and 211 navigators can help you in so many different ways.
211 connects people to local food programs.
Help with housing.
Mental health services.
Support for seniors.
Employment assistance.
If you're struggling, call, click, or text 211.
Help starts now.
Help starts now.
We were really thrilled to be part of a campaign that was designed to help promote 211 on 211 Day, which is February 11th, the second month and the 11th day. So thanks to those teams that participated. So I'd just like to start with a little educational moment. This is a list of the 3-digit dialing codes currently approved by the CRTC. And each CRTC approval requires that phone and wireless companies direct calls and texts to specific service providers. So after the dialing codes are approved, it can take many years for services to be established across each province. You'll see that there is a number of them here, and the most recent one in Ontario was 811, which was transitioned from the telehealth line just last year. And coming up later this year, the 988 mental health and suicide dialing code has been allocated and expected to start to roll out at the end of this year. So calls and texts, this visual, every service system that are routed have a unique funding sources and service delivery structures, and they vary by province. So on the left, this visual just shows a call or text being routed to a specific phone service, which is then answered by specific professionals at each of these. So in the examples I've used, the call could be answered by a community navigator at 211, a nurse at 811, or a dispatcher at 911. Here in Ontario, we have 6 integrated contact centers. So those phone calls that come into 211 can flow across 6 different organizations that operate as a single contact center. Helps us to be very efficient and provide seamless, efficient service to the province. So here in Canada, we now have a national network. We're now Canada-wide. And they're delivered by 11 information referral organizations, and many governments, United Way partners, support our work. On the left is a list of where the contact centers are. And important to note that all these service providers have an accreditation criteria that they need to meet, and our staff that work in our contact center and our database work are credentialed through an international organization. So how did Community Connection in Collingwood get part of a national 211 system? Just to give you a little brief history of this, in 1969, community volunteers established the Helpline and Volunteer Center here in Collingwood. In 1979, that helpline was incorporated as the Collingwood and District Information Center. We now go by Community Connection. In 1982, we achieved charitable status. And meanwhile, in 1987, the first 211 service launched in Atlanta, Georgia, and it started to give us an idea of how we could reach more people and make it easier for people to remember our phone number. In 2001, in Canada, the CRTC approved 211 as a dialing code. And in 2003, Community Connection was granted licensing to use the United Way's 211 logo, and given our ability to work with the phone services to start routing those calls to our contact center. In 2005, Community Connection became the second organization in Canada to launch 211 services. Back then, it was just to South Georgian Bay. In 2006, we were able to get provincial funding for the first time through the Ministry of Children, Community and Social Services. In 2008, we were able to expand our service to all of Simcoe County and eventually to Central East Ontario, helping our network in 2011 to achieve province-wide coverage. And then in 2020, we were able to expand the service to a nationwide coverage. So Community Connection, our core skills really are these 4 areas that are community navigators. They're really skilled in financial and social needs screening, and we really help people identify, understand, and use existing programs. We advocate on behalf of those who need special support. We conduct follow-up in situations where someone's at risk or vulnerable, and we're prepared to assess and meet the immediate short-term needs of people in crisis. Our database curators manage a province-wide inventory of over 60,000 community social health and government services, including the details about the services provided and the conditions under which they're available. Our team contacts all listed organizations and programs at least annually to update their information, and we continually monitor news and social media for changes in addition to services. So this work, particularly in our data resources, has been super challenging during the pandemic with so many changes to service availability. In our business intelligence, we collect and analyze and report data about call details, caller demographics, service outcomes, satisfaction surveys, and our website uses. And we can aggregate data reported in numerous ways to identify trending needs, growing service gaps, and barriers to service access. And we are able to do a lot of custom reporting to support advocacy and service planning in local communities. And our digital technology, which is a framework of business capabilities and technical components, enables us to have that integrated model of service delivery that I spoke about across the province. Our cloud-based phone platform enables us to set up custom phone lines and skill-based routing of calls and also custom reporting. And we also have a database platform with APIs that enable some bidirectional data sharing and that supports custom data sets and a number of online directories with our service partners across the region. So just to have a look at why people call 211 from Simcoe County. Last year, we handled just over 14,000 contacts. The pie chart on the left indicates the communities that we received those from. We can drill that right down by postal code if asked for. The chart on the right is just showing you the kind of surge in calls during the pandemic and where we're kind of leveling off, or where we leveled off in 2022. The top needs expressed by residents in Simcoe County, the top two were health and housing. You can see the full list on the left, but I just thought I'd show you the top 10 types of needs for each of those top two categories. So in health, the top need was medical expense assistance, healthcare referrals, home health care, those kinds of things. And with housing, the top call was for emergency shelter, housing search information, housing expense assistance, and so on. We can also look at the unmet needs. So while people can call and request services, there's a number of reasons why we're not able to help people find those. Again, unmet needs on the left, the top one of unmet were housing, and the second was income support. And on the right, again, just showing a little sample of the top 10 of what we mean by housing unmet needs. Top one was rent payment assistance. Second was homeless shelters, and so on. In the income support, the top unmet need was temporary financial assistance, tax preparation assistance, and so on. So there's various reasons why there be unmet needs. It could be access to those from a physical way or hours of service. The services could be on a wait list or on hold. Funds could be temporarily depleted. There may be access issues around language or cultural needs at these organizations, or the agency didn't follow through, or there was no answer or callback. A number of different reasons there. So that's from our phone, text, online chat service. And then online, which is where we serve the most people. Last year, we had over 100,000 page views. So in addition to our 211ontario.ca website, we have a number of custom directories that support online searching, still from a centralized database. And these are on this list on the right is a few of the custom ones we have here in Simcoe County. One is commonpoint.ca, which is mental health and addictions for children, youth, and families. It has a directory as well as a calendar of the walk-in clinics. Food in Simcoe County, which is a directory and calendar of free and low-cost meals. And both of those are used by our navigators to really help folks access those next day services in their communities. Info Simcoe County, I'm going to talk a little bit more about in a moment, and then the Simcoe County GIS mapping is an interactive map with the service directory, which I'll talk to now. So we were able to, we received funding over a number of years to do some work on to customize our database to really improve searching ability on the GIS mapping structure. We were able to translate our entire Simcoe County database to French. And we worked with the GIS team to really determine these categories that red arrow was showing. And our technical tool called an API continually feeds our database into the mapping tool. So it's continually updated. And it's really exciting to be able to do this level of work in community, and the team at the county are awesome to work with. At the same time, we created the info simcoecounty.ca. Again, it's bilingual. It has the calendars right there at the top, and then it enables people to search by category, or they can drill down in different ways. Again, just making the information available to folks online that are proficient enough to do their self-searching and access to organizations that way. So one of the other projects or services that I was asked to speak about was our referrals we received from Simcoe paramedics. We started this work in 2018. It was part of the North Simcoe Muskoka LHIN's Help Links, and it was really around enhancing and coordinating care for patients with multiple chronic conditions and complex needs, often people that are extremely vulnerable, living alone. You can see here we've handled over 4,400 referrals in that period of time, and the chart on the right just shows the type of needs that people present that we would get a referral for from a paramedic. These referrals can come from a 911 response or from a home visit. There's a number of different ways we would get a referral from the paramedic services. The County of Simcoe's Health and Emergency Services analyzed 911 calls between 2015 and 2021. We did this a couple of times, and consistent results. And the analyze was for patients that specifically received some level of support through a referral to 211. The analysis was based on a comparison of 6 months pre and post referrals for 569 patients. And the analysis shows that there's a 28% reduction in repeat calls to 911 for those paramedic services. So really good results and a really good partnership between our organizations in this way to serve people better. I'll just sum up with, we do a lot of partnerships. We have a volunteer board of directors that governs our organization. And our mission is to create and improve access to services for people. We have numerous partnerships in this pie chart. Some of these are, for example, with emergency response. We have protocols with many municipalities to support inquiry services during a significant event. And we've been involved in 11 events over the past 10 years or so. We also receive paramedic referrals from Grey County and Northumberland County paramedic services. We're involved in referrals from family health teams and hospitals across 4 counties and districts. Again, for patients that are impacted by social determinants of health, those are really people in poverty or unhoused. In Bruce Grey and Simcoe, we also offer a 24/7 housing helpline, and we're able to modify our phone system so callers from the regions, when they dial 211, they also hear another message that says, if you're calling for housing help, press 1. And that one, by pressing 1, those calls get routed to our team in Collingwood that are specially trained to support the individuals in these communities. We're leading things like a collaborative project to reduce seniors' isolation in Simcoe County, and we've established a region-wide website for volunteer opportunities called volunteerconnection.ca, and we're developing social activity calendars for social activity calendars for older adults. And probably the most significant initiative is a partnership with United Way Simcoe Muskoka to disseminate Urgent Needs Fund. It's a one-time grant to support immediate needs. And since June 2022, we've distributed over $270,000 to households in Simcoe County. So we do a lot of really unique partnerships across the region, and I'm really pleased to be able to share some of those with you today. I'll just stop sharing. See if there's any questions.
Yes, thank you, Pamela. What a great presentation, that 211. Congratulations, Collingwood, for taking something to a community event right to North America wide. So great job and a great presentation. So thank you very much for that. Any questions or comments from folks? Councillor Sandhu, I see first. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Ms. Hiller, for the presentation. Very informative, lots of information there, and it's such a great program. What I was wondering, would it be possible to have this presentation shared with the partners so we can share with the rest of our council?
Be happy to have that, and we'd also available to create some videos and different things to share if that's easier, or make presentations at any time. But happy to share this.
Thank you. Look forward to it.
Yes, great question, Councillor Sandhu, and thank you for sharing that, Pamela. We'll look forward to seeing that come through. I have a question from Councillor Belanger.
Through you, the chair, would it be appropriate that we can share your marketing video on some of the larger Facebook groups within our community?
That'd be awesome. That'd be a great idea. Thank you. I'll make sure that it's shared along with my presentation.
Perfect. Excellent. Great question again. And certainly the more we share this, the better off we are for everybody that they can get those services that 211 provides. So any further comments or questions from anybody? Oh, I see. Hang on. I see Cabral, Councillor Cabral, and I see Councillor Fryer next, and then I see Councillor Measures after that. Thank you. Councillor Cabral.
Thank you, Chair Leduc. Just a quick question, Ms. Hillier, with respect to the 201 connectivity. I'm just curious how the calls are routed, if you might be able to share that with us. Just with the advent of mobiles, we've got folks out in BC with Toronto exchanges and vice versa. Is it based on location or is it based on area code, the manner in which the calls are routed to 211?
Great question. Thank you. It's rooted by geography. Because originally it wasn't. So it's been, as the technology changes with telephone companies, we also benefit from that change with our dialing code routing. So a good question is geography. There are little glitches that do happen, but in general, it's by geography.
So off the first cell tower it touches then is the geography. So good question. And I have Councillor Fryer next.
Thank you, Chair Leduc, and not a question. I just want to thank Pam for her presentation. Excellent presentation, and looking forward. We're planning to have council visit sometime in the near future to get our own orientation of the center. But a lot of the success of the program is owed to Pam. Very hard worker and been involved in the program for a long time and very, very successful. So again, just to thank you.
Yes, great comments and thank you. I have Councillor Measures.
Thank you very much, Chair Leduc. Pam, it's great to see you again, and thank you very much. I know over 25 years we've known each other and seen the work that you and your team have done. And I'm very, very familiar with the program, and I've sort of observed it from afar and watched the growth and the changes in 211. Could you perhaps share with the members the level of training that goes into your call takers and your live person calls, particularly because I know that they have dealt with perhaps emergency calls that should actually be routed directly to the OPP. And can you just share that with us so that we understand the quality of people that are working there at 211?
Thank you. Good question. And we're very unique in that our staff can get a call from any situation of life's events. So they really we don't follow scripts, right? It's really around that human connection and that discussion and questions with the person that's calling. So our staff are trained, they have a certification in information referral specialty. So there's a number of criteria they have to, it's like an internship where they need to be on the job for so much, depending on their academics. So someone with a university degree, probably in social services of some sort, or different social service worker certificates, things like that. So if it was a college diploma, they'd have to be on the job for 2 years before they could write their exam. But they're also trained in all of the services in the community, Bridges Out of Poverty, cultural safety training, Indigenous service culturally, racialized populations, but really being able to be provide trauma-informed service, being able to understand the stages of change for an individual. So a senior that's isolated, who has now become, is really having a hard time making ends meet, is not apt to be out and doing social activities until they get that financial issue dealt with first. So it's really understanding human service systems and really understanding our service partners, so we can reach out to other organizations and brainstorm with another service provider around a client that's in a really specific situation. So it's really that kind of experience as opposed to a specific skill type, but it's really broad community. And we don't deliver services. Our job is to connect people to the people that do the service delivery. So it's a very unique spot and helps, and that's why we're so across so many service systems. It's just that unique role we play.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you very. Oh, I've got a question by Councillor Fryer again.
Actually, again, not a question. It's a follow-up, and it's brought up by what Mayor Measures just brought up. In talking with our fire services, one of our visits there, they've taken on quite a different role over the last few years in the types of services that they have to provide when they get to as a first responder. And they have come to rely quite heavily on 211. as an outreach ability to direct somebody to, because they're reaching out to the fire service people and trying to get answers in a number of areas that they don't have expertise in. So as I said, just another comment about how that service is evolving and turning out to be such a vital service for our community.
Great, thank you for that. Appreciate that. I'm scrolling back and forth to see if there's any further questions. I have Councillor Evans right now. And that's it. So Councillor Evans, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Leduc. Appreciate that. Ms. Hillier, thanks very much for your presentation. Just a quick question. I'm really supportive of the program, and I echo the sentiments of previous sentiments about getting this into our community a little bit more in terms of awareness. Presently, how many languages do you operate in, and what plans do you have to for the future? I know in new southern area of our county, we have a lot of new recent Canadians coming in, and where do you see that going in the future?
Another great question. So we have access to an interpretation service with over 170 languages currently available. So that we're able to purchase that because it's all 211s across North America use the same service. So it helps us to keep our costs down because they're very expensive. But we have a three-way call with individuals. So with an interpreter, with our information referral specialists. So that's what we have. So it's over 170 languages. We also have French language staff across the province. We do not have any French language navigators in our office. So that's where that skill routing and the technology, someone who's pressing French is going to go to where there is a bilingual staff person on. So the challenge we have nationally is the Indigenous languages in the North. It's going to take years for us to be able to serve those communities appropriately. But from the majority of services, over 170, and we could give you an example of what languages we use in the different communities too. So I hope
that's very impressive. Well, thank you very much. I didn't realize there was that many languages, but that sounds great. Thank you, Chair.
I got a question from Councillor Dolan next.
Thank you for the presentation, Ms. Hillier. I think that another touch point for us when people need help, they go to our libraries. We have an awful lot of people reaching out to the library. So do you do presentations or provide information to library boards?
I was just at the Innisfil Idea Lab yesterday doing a presentation with their entire staff team. So really good connection there, but we don't do enough of that. And now that we're back traveling and getting out and being able to have these conversations, that's what's really important. We would love to have that with the deeper relationship with libraries across the region.
Thank you.
Yeah, an absolute great question for the libraries, because the libraries do serve the most vulnerable at times. So yeah, good opportunity for us to reach out to libraries. So thanks, Councillor Dolan. Any further comments or questions? I'm just going to take a last scroll. All right, I don't see any, so I will read that the following consent item having been given due consideration be received. I have a mover and a seconder. All in favor? Carried, thank you. Moving on to Human Services Social Housing, 7.1. CCW 2023-062, 2023-24, 24-5 plan funding allocation for provincially delivered housing programs. Need a mover and a seconder for this, please. Moved by Councillor Cabral, seconded by Councillor Snell. Questions or concerns with this report? Let me just scroll, give me a second. I have Councillor Follis.
Thanks very much, Councillor Leduc. Just a question to staff here. Reading it over, I was curious, does this change any actual program implementation, or is this simply an accounting matter in the sense that this is what we're going to be putting money to, this is what we're going to be asking for? So I guess my question is, does this impact service delivery in any way? Thanks.
Through the chair, thank you. Through the chair, thank you, Councillor Prowlis. No, this is an allocation report, just mapping out our investment strategy for the three programs, the 2 provincial and the 1 federal. It doesn't change our overall plan as presented through the budget. And in fact, I believe this was just a request that we bring allocation reports through the orientation earlier this year, just to provide more information to council on how we receive and fund our programs.
Follow up, Councillor Fallis?
Yeah, thanks very much. I appreciate that. I did want to just make a note under one thing that stood out to me was on Ontario Renovates. And they note here that the provincial government's decreasing the annual amount, I believe, in half, if I'm understanding that correctly. First of all, I wanted to point that out to really make a note of that's really unfortunate to see. And I don't think that's fair if the province is cutting that type of service back. If staff could maybe explain what that funding would usually go to. And then also, are we going to be having to make that difference up? Just if I could have the general manager weigh in there again. Thanks.
Through the chair, thank you, Councillor Fallis. No, the province is not cutting this funding. What is happening here is that the funding for the Ontario Renovates program is also found in a different program. So what we've chosen to do is fund it through our separate program that actually gives more flexibility for more applicants to qualify. The provincial guidelines actually limit the level of qualification. So if we would fund the 500,000 over 2 years from the Ontario Priorities Housing Initiative, what would happen is very few people would be qualified in to use it. So what we've chosen to do is reduce that investment and then invest it through our other funding, which is a municipally funded program that allows more people to access it. And what we're doing is taking that amount that we're reallocating and investing it in our new development and other programs. So we're kind of making a more efficient decision on the provincial allocation.
Okay, a further follow-up, Councillor Fallis.
Thanks very much. I just wanted to add my apologies. I guess a rare situation where I blame the province and I didn't need to, I guess. So just wanted to make a point of that. Thanks.
We'll forgive you this time. Any further comments or questions from the council? Just to scroll real quick. Seeing none, so I will read the recommendation that item CCW 2023-062 dated February 28th, 2023 regarding 2023-24 and 24-25 planned funding allocation for provincially delivered housing programs be received by the County of Simcoe submit an investment plan to the province as generally outlined in item CCW 2023-062, and that staff amends the investment plan as may be required to avoid any loss of funds as generally outlined in item CCW 2023-062, and that the necessary bylaw be presented to authorize the general manager of social and community services and clerk to enter into a transfer payment agreement or amending agreement with the province to participate in provincial funding as generally outlined in item CCW 023-062, and to execute all associated agreements and documents necessary to carry out the provincial funding and any of its components. All in favor? Just a minute, I'll scroll quickly, then I think it's carried. Thank you, carried. Moving on to 7.2, CCW 2023-053. Bradford Affordable Housing Development Update and Leasehold Improvements Costing. I need a mover and a second. Put this on the floor, please. Moved by, let's see, I'd like to get somebody new. Councillor Smith, seconded by his warden. Questions or concerns with this report? I have a question to our GM, if you don't mind. Just concerned about the Bill 23 in here, where it says some of the funding is lost to the affordable housing from Bill 23. I'm not aware of Bill 23 changing other than it's been legislated, but there hasn't been any actual regulations come down yet from the province, unless it has in past recent. I don't know why we're having to do this right now. So can you give me a little bit of an explanation on what happened with that and why we're
Thank you for the question, Chair. If you recall on our last report on the RHI report, we are projecting a loss of revenue. When we structured the bill, we structured it when we structured this build and the budget for it, we structured it based on the anticipation of the anticipation of the development charge revenue. Now that Bill 23 has come into place since November of 2022, we're unable to rely on that funding as a part of the funding structure. So on the February 14th RHI report, we allocated the $8.6 million to offset that loss in order to reduce the pressure on this project. As we anticipate further details on the guidelines and the impacts, and hopefully if we see a shift or a change in terms of affordable housing projects or subsidized housing projects like this one may be qualified under an exemption, then certainly we'd readjust that budget accordingly. But at this point, in order to allocate the federal funding, which has a very tight timeline, if you recall, we are anticipating just this short on Bill 23, the impact of Bill 23.
Okay, so we're just doing it out of anticipation. Okay, further comments or questions on this? Seeing none, I will read the motion. That item CCW 2023-053 dated February 28th, 2023 regarding a Bradford Affordable Housing Development Update and leasehold improvement costs be received, and that adjustments to the Bradford Affordable Housing Development budget be to reflect development charge revenue loss as a result of Bill 23, More Homes Built Faster Act 2022, and to include the required budget increase for additional capital costs incurred, and to enable the completion of the cost recoverable leasehold improvements for the community and social services commercial agency space as generally outlined in item CCW 2023-053 be approved. All in favor? Let me scroll the screen. Thank you. Carried. We will move into 7.3 CCW 2023-054 Aurelia Hub Development Update and Leasehold Improvement Costs. Move in second, put this on the floor, please. Moved by Councillor Greenlaw, seconded by, I'll go to my second page. I'm sorry, I'm going to pick somebody up from the second page. I have Councillor Rose. Thank you. Questions or comments with this? Councillor Follis.
Thanks very much. Just a quick statement from me, and I think I don't know if other Aurelia Council members in the mayor will weigh in, but I just wanted to really reiterate my support for this project, and also really say thanks to everyone on the county for bringing this forward, because this is a really essential housing project that we honestly needed it in Aurelia 5 years ago. So it's great to see it come to fruition right now. I think, it sounds like this is kind of the final piece of the puzzle in terms of funding. So it really is almost there. But just really wanted to put it out there that this is a really great project to see it coming forward, and really urge all of County Council to support this. Thanks.
Thank you for those comments. Any further questions or comments on this report? All right, seeing none, I will read the recommendation. That item CCW 2023-054 dated February 28th, 2023 regarding the Aurelia Hub Development Update and Leasehold Improvement Costing be received, and that adjustments to the Aurelia Hub Development budget to reflect development charge revenue loss as a result of Bill 23, More Homes Built Faster Act 2022, and to include the required budget for the completion of the cost recoverable leasehold improvements for the social and community service commercial agency space as generally outlined in item CCW 2023-054 be approved, and that $5,792,400 in federal and provincial funding under the 2023-24 Ontario Priorities Housing Initiative and the Canadian Ontario Community Housing Initiative be used to partially offset the increased unfinancial capital required for the Aurelia Hub development resulting from the development charge revenue loss, as well as to reduce contributions from the cities of Barrie and Aurelia. All in favor? Just check my second screen, sorry. Thank you, approved. Moving on to section 8, Human Resources Community Services. I have 8.1 CCW 2023-066, 77 Tiffin Street Supportive Housing Project, head lease and operating agreement. I'll move it a second, put this on the floor, please. Looking for Barrie reps. Have we got some Barrie reps in here today? Just looking around here. We've got Councillor Ripma and, sorry, I will go back then to Councillor Hamilton. Thank you. And question or concerns with this report? Councillor Fallis.
Thanks. I'm going for the perfect scorecard here and speaking to each issue. I was really encouraged to see this project come forward and was really interested to learn a bit more about it. This might be more of a conversation with staff on the sidelines, but I'm just curious if, as a county, we actively look for motels throughout the area that are for sale or could easily be acquired, just as just for potential retrofits and for affordable housing purposes. I don't know if there's a staff member that could weigh in on that. Thanks.
GM.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Councillor Fallis. Yes, the answer. We meet weekly, looking for and working with our real estate group, constantly looking for opportunities for these type of projects, the supportive housing, especially as you recall, like with those rapid housing initiatives and different type of funding models that have like quicker turnarounds. There is always opportunity for acquisition and conversion. Now that, you know, a lot of our SSRF, which was an emergency response fund from the province that also allowed for capital investment, we had more than one option to do so. Now that we're limited to just the different rounds of the Rapid Housing Initiative, it is a little bit less of an opportunity than it was, you know, in the last couple of years. But we are certainly always looking for opportunities that make sense, you know, to increase the supportive housing stock.
Further comments? Okay, sorry, I'm just going to check my second screen. Seeing none at this time, so I'll read the recommendation. That item CCW 2023-066, dated February 28th, 2023, regarding 77 Tiffin Street Supportive Housing Project, head lease and operating agreement be received, and that the warden and county clerk to enter into a lease agreement with Elizabeth Fry Society, Simcoe, Muskoka, to provide supportive, affordable housing to address chronic homelessness in the county of Simcoe. All in favor? Make my second screen. Thank you, carried. Moving on to section 9, Human Services Long-Term Care Committee of Management. I have 9.1 CCW 2023-067 Long-Term Care Diagnostic Imaging Project. Need a mover and a second for this, please. I'm looking at Councillor Anderson and Councillor Rawson. Moved by Councillor Anderson, second by Councillor Rawson. Any questions or concerns with this report? It's a good report. I see none. I will then read the motion that item CCW 2023-067 dated February 28th, 2023, regarding the County of Simcoe Paramedic Services participation in the Barrie and Area Long-Term Care Diagnostic Imaging Project be received. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Human Services, other matters. And I don't think I have other matters, so I turn it back to you, Warden.
Thank you. Is everybody okay, or does anybody want a quick break? I'm not seeing any yellow cards. We're making good time, so I'll thank the Aurelia councillors and the Barrie councillors for joining us, and then I'll turn it over to my Chair of Corporate Services, Chairman Dolan.
Thank you, Your Worship. So we're on item 11. Corporate Services consent list. There's 3 items on the consent list. There is the municipal primer regarding source water protection. There's the County of Simcoe Transit status update. And there's the data recall results and organics milestones. And I want to know if anyone has any questions or would like to pull any of those items. Alternate Councillor Belanger.
Thank you, Chair Dolan. I just have a question, being unfamiliar and new to the board of directors for the NVCA. Am I in any kind of conflict on, I think it's 12.2, or are we okay?
Thank you for the question. It's not really it's not really up to us to decide that, but Clerk Daly, do you have any comments for Councillor Belanger?
Thank you, Chair Dolan. And you are correct. It's not appropriate for staff or other members of council to determine a conflict from another member. If in doubt, Councillor Belanger, it's probably safer just to make a declaration at this point.
Okay, then to be safe, I'm not familiar, it's brand new, so I don't really have a position, but to be safe, I will not vote on that item.
Wonderful. And I'm sure the clerk's office will send the paperwork that you need to fill out for that, Councillor, and totally understandable. Any other items people want to ask a question or to pull? Councillor Hanlon.
Thank you, Chair. A question with respect to the County of Simcoe Transit status update. I certainly hear a lot in Collingwood about how difficult it is to get transit from Collingwood to get to Barrie. And of course, from Barrie, one can then get down to the city. And also there's lots of things to do in Barrie that Collingwood residents would like to take advantage of. And also we have launched a new accessible transit service in our community. It's oversubscribed, let's just say that. And in reading the county report, I'm just wondering if there's efficiencies that can be gained by some speaking to the county organizers of the county transit system. So really my question is, seeing reports coming forward on this, who is the best person for our town staff to get in touch with to have some discussions about seeing if we can improve our service?
Jim Elliott.
Okay.
Thank you, through the chair. By all means, a couple of components to your question, Councillor.
Yeah.
One is our staff do speak with the providers of our local transit systems on a regular basis. We are undertaking an update to our transit master plan, which would guide our direction over the next 5 to 10 years. But the short answer to your question is our manager of transit is Dennis Childs, and there would certainly be a willingness to speak in more the spirit of cooperation with our partners to provide a more seamless service level for our customers.
Yeah, there's some real, it's very difficult to get to Barrie from Collingwood, let's just say by transit. You have to be ready to commit a substantial amount of time. And it would be so great also if we could get to Barrie to take advantage of some of the GO Transit trains, right? So those kind of things. Okay, we'll be in touch. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hanlon. Other items that people want to ask a question about? Councillor Cabral.
Thank you very much, Chair. I guess my question is, after reading the report, I know that a lot of residents, and it's a great service. I love the idea of the uptick in ridership, especially given that we've just been through the pandemic. However, there's a lot of concerns, I guess, for the most part, with respect to seniors, students, I guess those that have been left out of the loop when we come to a transit service that only operates Monday through Friday. And I was looking through the report to see if there was any indication that transit service would start to be provided on Saturdays and Sundays to make it more of a whole service, provide students an opportunity to travel outside of their community for work, provide seniors who don't drive the opportunity to attend appointments and whatnot on Saturdays and Sundays as well. So I guess through you to a member of staff that might be in a position to provide some insight to that, I'd very much like to know what the future holds.
Jim Elliott.
Thank you, and through you, Chair Dolan. The short answer to your question, Councillor, is that one of our routes does offer weekend service right now, the route between Collingwood and Osega Beach. However, the transit master plan update that we're undertaking this year is actually going to look at all of those things that you raised questions around. The whole link service was just rolled out in 2019 based on what we understood the community to need at the time. 5 years into this, as we develop our next plan, that's going to look at all of those needs and requests of our community. But of course, it's always a constant balancing act between the affordability of the program, the needs of our residents, and rolling this out in a kind of a responsible and fiscally manageable way.
Go ahead, follow up, Councillor Cabral.
Following, thank you very much. I do appreciate that response. That's exactly what I was looking for. I know it's not something that can be done quickly. However, I do recall as a youngster living in Pickering when they first opened up the GO train, And unlike Barrie, they provided a 7-day-a-week service in order to accommodate folks who were working, but it also provided at least one vehicle per hour, one train per hour. Whereas, Barrie, the trains head down, they park at Union Station and then come down at the end of the day. So that's why I was a little bit anxious to find out about the Lynx travel transit. Because we also have in our community, at least in Springwater and Elmville, some of the community groups, in particular the Elmville and District Lions Club, did put up a bus shelter in order to facilitate the comfort of the riders. So it'd be nice to be able to encourage that aspect too with, I guess, Saturday and Sunday service. So I look forward to seeing more of that coming down the road. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other on the 3 consent list items? Any other comments or questions from members of council? Councillor Feller.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair Dolan. I'm looking at the report 055 for the Lynx. I'm just asking a question. It says Lynx Plus provides service to individuals with disabilities, including a fleet of accessible minibuses. For individuals who cannot use conventional transit, the Lynx Plus offers door-to-door service with specialist vehicles within 1 kilometer of conventional routes. Who decides the range and why the 1 kilometer? I'm trying to fathom that. If it can be explained, to be appreciated.
Jim Elliott.
Yes, thank you. Through the chair, I might invite our manager rather of transit services, Dennis Child, who can speak to this in a little bit more detail. I believe Dennis is online. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Child.
Thank you very much for the question. So the 1 kilometer limit was actually a standard transportation standard, which came through the AODA. And that is the limit that was in the standard. That's a standard that we put into play. When we first started the service in 2018, we had a 400-meter standard, which was the average walking distance to the stop. And that was increased to 1 kilometer through the pandemic, which has allowed more service and more specialized service for people with disabilities.
Follow up, Councillor Fowler?
Yes. Do you see a large percentage of the population using this in this scenario, or is there going to be a call to amend this for further reach?
I think that thank you very much for the question. I think the best way we'd be able to do that is look at the transportation master plan and our 5-year plan. One of the, it's going to be that information that we'll be able to bring back to County Council, which will determine the best direction for specialized transit within the County of Simcoe.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Childs. Any other questions or comments from members? Seeing none. Oh, Councillor Warden Clark.
It's okay. Listen, I did want to point out 11.3, our organics, the wonderful milestone we hit at 200,000, 1 ton per household. So there will be a celebration, not today, unfortunately canceled due to weather, but in the future, we'll get together for a photo op. And yeah, just an outstanding achievement. I'll say more at that time. But even myself, I've found that I'm putting out my garbage maybe 3 times a year now. Because once you take the smelly stuff out, it works a lot better, but we still got a ways to go. But I wanted to highlight that quickly. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Your Worship. I was also going to just ask GM Elliott if he would. It's the milestone that we've reached, and also the fact that we're still number 2 in organics diversion. GM Elliott.
Thank you, Chair Dolan, and thank you, Your Worship. It really is a good news report. We participate in a province-wide reporting program known as the Data Call, and it highlighted again that for our comparator municipalities, Simcoe County achieved a ranking of number 2 for our diversion rate for our organics, which is a fantastic story. We're really proud of that. I think it's something that our citizens should also be commended for. It's really important to note, though, that we still see a large amount of organic material being put into the waste stream. So it's a great news story. We achieved a really good milestone based on our comparators, but it also presents an opportunity. We think the 200,000 tons of organics that has been diverted since the inception of the Green Bin program in the county equates to about 4 years of our landfill capacity. So that's really good news. We are going to be bringing forward a few reports in early April and hosting a workshop with council, because there's a lot more detail around the waste program that we want to bring council up to speed on, and set the stage for future decision making about the program, levels of service, and some technologies that we would like to explore and get council support for. So it's a fantastic news story. We're really proud of the targets that have achieved. The one thing that we've noted, though, is that since about 2014, the diversion rate has stagnated a little bit. So there's a bit of a hill for us to climb in terms of getting more organics out of that waste stream, and we are going to do some public outreach on opportunities and options to do that. So great news story, but still lots of work ahead of us.
Thank you, GM Elliott. Looking forward to growing that program and getting to the #1 position. So I'm seeing no other cards. So could I please have a mover and a seconder for the consent list? Councillor, is it Locke? I'm sorry. Am I saying it right?
It's Locks. Thank you.
Locks, Councillor Locks, and Councillor Hamlin, that the following consent items, having been given due consideration, be received. All those in favor? Those opposed? That is carried. Next, we'll go to the Economic Development Subcommittee report from February the 14th. Any comments or questions on that report? Seeing none, could I ask Councillor Hamlin, the chair, and Councillor Fowler, the vice chair, to move and second the recommendation, please? Which is that the recommendations contained within the Economic Development Subcommittee report dated February the 14th, 2023 be approved. All those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. Now I will relinquish the chair to Councillor Measures, as I am declaring pecuniary interest on the next item.
All right, thank you very much, Madam Chair. I will move us to item 12.2. It's a letter from the Nottawasaga Valley Conservation Authority and the Lake Simcoe Region Conservation Authority dated February 7th regarding the townships Oro Medonte and Aguila Serrano assessment report. Is there any questions or comments in regards to this item before I read the recommendation? I don't see any. All right. Then I will read it, and then I'll look for a mover and seconder. The recommendation is that the correspondence dated February 7th, 2023 from Sarah Thompson, Nottawasaga Valley Conservation Authority, and Bill Thompson, Lake Simcoe Region Conservation Authority, regarding amendments to the South Georgian Bay Lake Simcoe Source Protection Plan notification of consultation pursuant to section 34-2 and 34-3 of the Clean Water Act 2006 and Ontario Regulation 287-07 request for council resolution to be received, and that County Council endorse the proposed amendments to the Oro Medonte and Aguila Serrano chapters of the Nottawasaga Valley Assessment Report, as well as the South Georgian Bay Lake Simcoe Source Protection Plan outlined in the amendments to South Georgian Bay Lake Simcoe Source Protection Plan notification of consultation pursuant to section 34-2 and 34-3 of the Clean Water Act 2006 and Ontario Regulation 287-07 regarding the correspondence dated February 7th, 2023, and that the NVCA and Lake Simcoe Regional Conservation Authority be notified of County Council's decision. Okay, can I have a mover and seconder on the floor? Mr. Fowler and Mr. Locks. Thank you. Is there any questions to this? Seeing none, then I'll call the motion. All those in favor? And I see I'll consider that carried. At this time, I can pass it back to Chair Dolan.
Thank you. That's the end of my section. I'll pass it back to His Worship.
Thank you, councillors. And then we will look for Vice Chairman Evans, if you would take performance management, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Be happy to. Good morning, everybody. Discussing section 13, performance management, items to do with finance. The first item for consideration is item 13.1, CCW 2023-041, consolidated fees and charges. bylaw amendments for 2023. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please, for discussion? Mover, please. Councillor Rawson, seconded by Councillor Anderson. Any questions, comments? Councillor Leduc, please.
Just curious, and I guess direct this question to GM Wilcox. Just wondered why this isn't part of the actual budget when we supported the budget on the 31st of January. Why this bylaw wasn't included in that at that time? Isn't the user fees part of the budget already? And it shows on one of the pages.
General Manager Wilcox, if you could, please. General.
Sorry, just
No worries,
hear me?
no worries. It's all good. Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, there we go. Through the chair, thank you, Councillor. Yes, where identified where we anticipate changes, they are brought through and anticipated in the budget. I think the majority of these changes are rather small in terms of the overall impact to the budget, so they weren't discussed at that time. If they do have an impact, they would be noted in the budget binder and anticipated there.
Councillor Leduc, any follow-up?
No, it's okay. I was just curious why it wasn't included in the final recommendation at that time.
I understand. Fair enough. Further comments, questions, councillors? I don't see any, so I will move to motion. Got item CCW 2023-041 dated February 28th, 2023 regarding consolidated fees and charges bylaw amendments be received and that necessary bylaw be presented to repeal and replace the fees and schedules bylaw number 6884 substantively and in the form attached as Schedule 1 to item CCW 2023-041. All those in favor? Those opposed? The motion is carried. Thank you. Now I'd like to invite General Manager Wilcox to introduce the 2023 tax ratios and tax rates presentation. General Manager, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'd like to ask Peter Fries, who is the Vice President, Corporate and Client Services with Municipal Tax Equity Consultants. Peter is our tax consultant has been for a number of years and advising us on all matters related to our property tax, and he has a presentation for us today to walk through. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair and councillors. We're all set up. I will share my screen. All right, how's that?
I believe we're okay. I'm looking around the room. Anybody have a problem? Mr. Fries, I think we're good to go. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I am going to give you a hopefully a fairly brief presentation on just a couple of the core tax decisions that are made annually. Each year, both the county and the local area municipalities must make a number of decisions before tax bills go out the door to fund our local services. And the county, in addition to setting a levy amount, how much they would like to raise, is responsible for shaping the tax system locally within the confines of provincial legislation. But you set a number of tax policies on an annual basis. There aren't any changes being recommended this year, but it's still, and particularly with the new council, it's new members, it's good to walk through and explain what these decisions are. This is an annual exercise, and even when changes aren't being contemplated, there's underlying change because the assessment base that you're taxing on is constantly in flux. So we need to know how these things work. Right now, we're also in a bit of an anomalous period in that we do not have reassessment. The province paused reassessment as one of its reactions to the pandemic. Sort of everything was being paused, and that has continued through They haven't restarted it yet. So we're still dealing with the tax assessments that were set for 2017 originally through 2020. We're still taxing on those, and those are January 1st, 2016 values. So when you look at your tax bill, it's based on a fairly old value at this point. So generally speaking, we would have to deal with reassessment and phase-in related tax implications, and those are shifts. But it's good to know how all of these things work. And there's four main variables that are going to affect your taxes. Reassessment and phase-in, not an issue this year. Growth, which means your base has changed. There's new assessment, new taxpayers. Tax policy decisions, which is what the staff report relates to today. How are we going to balance the tax amongst property classes and in other ways? And then levy change. How much do we need to raise locally? So it's always good to get a bit of an understanding of this. I will go through this quickly because some of it's not happening this year. The most important thing to know, and if you're new to this discussion, this is really important. Growth means we're adding properties or accessible improvements to the base. Those are new homes, new buildings, new factories, or the reverse, we tear down a factory or close a plant, things like that. Simcoe's in great shape in that generally it's marked by positive growth. Reassessment, which we're not in right now, or valuation change is simply about market. It's about taking somebody's estimate, the estimate of your home, your business, your neighbor's home, and saying, what is the estimate of the value at a point in time? Now we're going to update it. So the last time we did this, we updated from 2012 to 2016. At some point, we'll update from 2016 to 2020. Well, sorry, we don't know what year. We'll update at some point. What does reassessment do? And this is important because we know the property values are much different than we're being taxed on. And you may have taxpayers who say, hey, I just got my tax bill. They're based on $225,000. My neighbor just sold for $500,000, $600,000. There's a discrepancy, a bigger discrepancy than we've seen in many years. So the automatic reaction is, does that mean my taxes are going to double? No, it doesn't. We use assessment as a distribution method. So it's about shares, proportional shares. How much of the base does my house represent? How much does your represent? If yours is 1% of the base and mine is 0.5%, you're going to carry, in very simple terms, 1% of the tax. I'm going to carry 0.5%. So when we reassess in this example, we have assessments going up 18, 20, 12%. It's about how the shares change. So although we're going up 18%, my share of CDA only changed by 1.7. I just went up a bit compared to property 3, and property 3 went down a bit compared to me. Our new relationship has changed. So it's a change in the relationship, not the change in those dollars. So if you do have a taxpayer say, hey, what's going to happen? I know I just, bought my house for $500,000 and I'm paying tax at 2. Are my taxes going to go up? No, we could see some volatility, and that's not really, a discussion for today. But it is important to know it's shares changing, not absolute assessment change. It's going to drive those shifts in the future when we do restart reassessment. Right now, we still have growth. And that's the other big question that I do get about the pause in reassessment. What's it mean now? Does it mean we don't have more assessment coming on board? Are we not getting our growth because we're not getting that reassessment change? Well, consistent with the fact that reassessment is a shift, not an increase or a decrease in the base. Growth is different. So it's still coming on. We're still seeing growth. We're still adding new homes, maybe some negative growth, things like that. In general, the county is going up. So the pause in reassessment hasn't stopped that at all. And really the distinction between these two phenomenons, which are happening in the real world, and then we're just reflecting them in taxes. Reassessment doesn't add new properties. Growth does. Okay, so when we add reassessment, I know that there may not have been a house there in 2016 and it's there now, but we've accounted for that as growth. When the value is updated, it will be the same on both sides. So we still have growth, and that's kind of where we need to start before we talk about 2023 tax. We got to know what happened during 2022. since we levied taxes, since you levied taxes and struck the rates, and the roll was returned by MPAC. Last year, you billed taxes on the roll is returned. All of that growth occurred during the year. New homes, potentially some, some appeal reductions, something was shut down. And you always are going to have negative growth. It's never going to be net positive growth, or sorry, you can have net positive growth, never going to be universally positive growth, because we're not adding land. You're not taking land from the Bruce or Duffin or something. We're dealing with the same land. So we're adding and changing properties, adding accessible improvements. It makes sense that we have, farm loss and residential increase because we are, turning some farms into homes, things like that. So the assessment increase, or the assessment growth, was 1.82% during 2022. That translates into tax growth in the county levy of just over $3.5 million. That means that last year, when you struck your rates, you set them to raise $186.3 million. At the end of the year, if we took all the taxpayers and we took your 2022 rates and we said, what would those new homes, new businesses, things like that, what would we have? We'd have an extra $3.5 million. Now, what's really important, particularly in the two-tier, is to understand that that $3.5 million is raised from new taxpayers. So taxes did not increase generally in Simcoe County by 1.91% during 2022. So, the family that had the home on January 1st that is still there, they didn't pay any more than they did their final tax bill. This is raised from a concentrated group of properties. And so when we look at this locally, and this is why I say it's important, particularly in a two-tier circumstance, when we look at how things change from year to year, particularly the local view of that county levy, if we're Clearview or Collingwood or whoever we are, this $373,000, that was carried by new taxpayers, not by existing. So Collingwood's taxpayers in general are not paying, 2.61% more tax. There are some new additions. The existing taxpayers are paying what, they paid based on their final bill last year. Again, the tax growth is very healthy, 1.91%. It's great. It's a little higher than the assessment growth when we make the tax translation. And that's because some of our loss was on farm, which is weighted down. And then we have growth, and not every dollar of assessment is worth the same in tax. So this tells us how we got to the end of 2022. And we need to do this before we understand what's going on in 2023. We end up with a notional baseline. Those of you who have seen my presentation in the past in reassessment years, you would know at this point we'd be looking at all those shifts and differences from one year to the next, driven by assessment. But we always stick to that year-end revenue number. Our year-end revenue number stays the same, whether it's a reassessment year or not. We measure growth up to December 31st. And that December 31st revenue number is our January 1st starting position. And it's what the Municipal Act calls our revenue limit. That is the amount we can raise in 2023 in this case, it is the county's general levy with a 0% increase and a 0% decrease. And that will hold true down to the taxpayer level because we have no reassessment. If I lived in my house on January 1st last year and it was assessed and I didn't change anything, and the county raised exactly this much money in 2023 with no change in tax policy, I would pay the exact same county tax as I did in 2022. Obviously, there's going to be an increase this year, so I'll pay that much more, but I'll share that equally with all my fellow taxpayers. And that's where we get to the balance of taxation. We have to decide how much money we want to raise, but the other county responsibility is to decide who is going to pay. And the main tool we have to distribute tax, other than value, which means that if your home is worth 10% more than mine, you're going to pay 10% more. We can augment the distribution, the value distribution, based on a classification. So a value distribution, as I mentioned before, is very simple. It's about shares. So it doesn't really, I mean, it matters what my assessment is, but if this class structure, if we had no ratios, and we'll skip those for a second, if residential is 60% of the base, they're going to pay 60% of the tax. If farm is 15, they're going to pay 15%. We're going to augment that with some municipal decisions around tax policy. We can change the weighting. And that's what tax ratios and tax classes are designed to do. We can take different classes and weight the assessment differently. We are going to say farm is going to be weighted down. We're going to tax it at a ratio of 0.25, which means that every dollar of farm assessment, we're going to treat like 25 cents a residential assessment. We can treat commercial or multi-residential higher and say that every dollar of commercial assessment is $1.50 of residential assessment. And we apply that ratio and we weight the tax. So, this is more about the weighted CVA. In our previous example, sorry, I'm just going to flip back one slide. Our farm was carrying 15% of the CVA. They're carrying 3.8% of the weighted CVA. So they carry 3.8% of the tax. And the county's ratio structure determines that. This is our share of CVA. This is how it would be, our taxes would actually be distributed if we had no tax classes with ratios. The county utilizes a set of ratios that do differ by class, and that changes the balance of taxation. So because farm is weighted down, it pushes some share of tax onto residential. Because commercial is weighted up, it carries a little bit more proportional share in tax than it does in CVA. And the county's ratios have undergone some very deliberate and changes over the past several years, really beginning in 2017, which was the start of the prior assessment cycle. This graph only shows you the ratios that have been changed. The little red inside the markers indicates a change year. And based on decisions made at the end of 2016 and some direction from council going into 2017, there was a migration of a couple ratios. Industrial was effectively moved down to match commercial, and multi-residential was moved down to match residential. So that's all flat. I will tell you on that one, you're in good shape because housing, as you all know, is a very big issue right now. There is a lot of indicators saying that the province is going to implement some mandatory reductions around that ratio. You're already there, so you don't have to do that, migration, which we can see tax shifts from. So you're already equalized. You have very flat ratios, and those have been made for over a number of years. If you did want to move ratios, we have to do so within the confines of provincial policy and limits. These are your current ratios in this column. These are what we call the ranges of, they're actually called this in the regulation, ranges of fairness. It's obviously a subjective term, but that's what they are called. And for the most part, you can move your ratios towards or within those ranges of fairness, or you can leave them where they are. So in most cases, it's a move down, your flexibility. Again, there's no recommendations in the staff report this year to move ratios. And strategically, your county's ratios are very, very well positioned. And although this wasn't deliberate at the outset because we didn't know, we could be facing the most dramatic reassessment we've had since 1998. Lower ratios will create stability within that because you're not over leveraging more volatile assessment. So it's good. The flatter your ratios, we do know are better for stability for other classes. Whether that's as a result of appeals don't hurt so much when you lose a business property, it doesn't go down as a multiple. If you have a ratio of 1.19 in industrial and you have a big industrial appeal loss, it doesn't hurt so much. If you have a ratio of 2.5 and you have that same dollar loss, it's really going to disrupt residential. So your ratios are great for stability. And again, the newest one, which I would say is a benefit, is that you're already equalized on multi-res. So, that being said, you are making a ratio decision. So I'll just quickly kind of document or illustrate what a ratio change does. And it's really important to understand a couple main things. A ratio change does not increase or decrease your overall net tax. Okay, so if I say, okay, let's decrease the commercial ratio and it goes down, that's not just a decrease to commercial and we walk away. That is a shift because it's about shares. When we decrease that commercial share, everybody else is going to pay a bit more. It's always a closed circuit. It's always revenue neutral. We're always going to, when we reduce commercial, it is going to increase everybody else. So in this first example, commercial model, we've decreased the commercial ratio by 10%, just to show you a bit of the mechanics. That takes $1.3 million off the commercial class in county levy. So there'd be individual impacts within each local area municipality, or 9.33%. Everybody else is going to pay at 0.75% more because their weighted share has increased as commercial's weighted share decreases. Industrial, and we showed you these two examples, not because they're being proposed, but because they help us illustrate some of the phenomena going on here. It is a smaller class to begin with. And the ratios are fairly similar. We're moving them both by 10%. But because this is a smaller class to start with, then it's a smaller impact. Again, very similar in percentage, but we're only moving $276,000 here. You'll notice that residential is picking all of this up. Well, if you went back to that chart, they're our biggest class. So really, a ratio change is dependent on how big the class is before you start the change and how big the change is. And that applies to the class you're changing and the class that's going to pay. In this case, residential's 80-odd%. They're going to pick up 80-odd% of that shift, whatever we take off. If we cut a small class like landfill in half, you wouldn't even notice it because it's so minor. But so that's what happens when you do change ratios. It's never a net gain, net loss. Same thing. We can't increase the commercial ratio and raise more money. It doesn't work like that. It's a balancing thing. Think of it as a balance, not a, we get more money from two ways. We get it from growth, which we saw, those are new taxpayers, and then raising additional revenue from existing taxpayers because of inflation or increased service or whatever we need to do. That annual notional rate that we saw, that starting point is our revenue neutral position. Under that model, everybody will pay what they paid last year. If you're one of the growth properties, you will pay what your taxes worked out to on December 31st. This year's budgetary estimate, so the full levy, I don't know, it's nothing's set in stone until you sign that tax rate bylaw, but right now it's sitting at 3.5%. That is a $6.6 million increase over your revenue limit. That means all taxpayers in the county will pay 3.5% more because we're not changing any tax policies, so no shifts here. Every taxpayer will pay 3.5 more on the county portion. Now, if you also have a 3.5 on your local, then they will pay 3.5 on their municipal portion. It's not additive. We don't, they're not paying 7% more. So keep that in mind. But they're paying 3.5 more, and everybody shares in that equally. If we were changing ratios, we would show how the balance changed, and then we would add on the levy change. And again, from the local perspective, as we get into higher rates of growth and higher rates of levy change, because this is certainly one of the bigger levy changes that you've had over the past few years, makes sense. We're into a high inflation period. We want to make sure that we're understanding how taxes have changed over time. And particularly important where you have a high rate of growth and a higher levy change. So if I'm Collingwood, I want to make sure that I'm clear that my last year's taxpayers started with 14.2. This was not carried generally, so we can't, we don't want to assume that Collingwood taxpayers generally are paying that much more, that they're paid 5 point, or 7.1, I guess, percent more tax, or 6.1% more tax. They're not. The average person who didn't change their property last year is paying 3.5 more in county tax. This 2.61%, that 373 was carried by new taxpayers only. And they will also pay 3.5 more percent than they did at the year end. But they're not, it's not that the county taxes is going up for every Collingwood taxpayer at, 2.61 plus 3.5. So that's an important dynamic. So we have the full year, which is we know how the base has grown since the year. We're skipping reassessment this year. There are no shifts between the calendar years. There's no tax policy changes, so there's no shifts there. We really have two phenomena influencing the difference between the last year's county requisition and this year's. One is growth, two is levy change, at least the way it reads now. So that's the end of the content.
Great, Peter, thank you so much. That was very enlightening, especially this year. Some of the townships, like myself, are going through some rather dramatic changes in taxation rates. So this is a great backup for all of us. I might just, on behalf of everybody, I know you put together, there's some of the similar data in our presentation and the agenda here, but would it be possible for you to make the presentation available to council?
Yes, I believe it is available. Should be with the staff, may correct me. I believe it is.
Okay, well,
that's
fine. We can work out we'll work out the logistics. So just, I'm sure there'll be a few questions from the floor here for your copy of that presentation. So let me just move on here. So we're item 13.2, CCW 2003. 069 2023 tax ratios and tax rates from our recent presentation by Peter Fries, Vice President, Corporate and Client Services, Municipal Tax Equity Consultants, Inc. Can I have a mover, please, and a seconder for discussion on the floor? Councillor Fryer, thank you. And Councillor Fowler, thank you. All right, comments and questions, please. Let me get my glass, make sure I got it here. Councillor Cabral, we'll start with you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. I guess I just wanted to ask a question if it's something that might be answered. The way I understood that is on December 31st, there's going to be a number, the year end, and that's what we're going to start with as far as our tax base is concerned on January the 1st. Then towards the very end of this presentation, it came about that new growth would pay for the growth throughout the year. And I'm just wondering, and that the existing residents wouldn't be the one that would pay for it. So I'm looking for some clarification. So if we were going to increase our taxes by, let's say, 10%, are we able to reduce it by the new growth that we're anticipating by using dollars that we haven't received yet? I guess that would be my question, because it seems to me that if there's a tax increase and it's being offset by future dollars we haven't gotten yet, that the current taxpayers will be paying that upfront now. So,
thank you, Councillor Cabral. I'll direct this first to General Manager Wilcox, and then if General Manager Wilcox can pass it along to Mr. Fries if needed. General Manager.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to restate the question so that I get it correctly, Councillor. You're asking if we had anticipated growth, whether that would be offset by a levy increase?
I guess for clarification, given that January 1st, we're going to use that tax dollar number from the previous year to base our budget. If we need more additional money, it's going to be a tax increase. And I guess what I'm asking is, do we look at what we feel our potential growth is going to be for that year? Are we in a position to apply that on January the 1st to our budget, let's say, in order to reduce the tax implication on January the 1st?
Okay.
Basically, by saying we've got this new growth coming, other people are going to be paying for it. But on January 1st, we're utilizing those dollars now to offset the tax, but we have current residents who are going to be paying it forward from January the 1st. I hope that clarifies my question.
I think I've got.
Yeah,
Town
no,
manager,
that's
clear on that? Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, Councillor, that's very clear. If you look in your budget, we do have an outline of the levy components. We do anticipate growth as part of the levy components that are in there. So we have an estimate of a 2% increase in growth throughout 2023. We also have an estimate of supplementary taxes which come in through the year as well. And then we add on top of that the levy increase related to the tax rate increase. So those are the components that are put into the budget. So we do anticipate growth. If there is extra growth through the year, that will show up as a surplus at the end of the year. And when we report to council, we will provide that. That information for 2022 will be coming up shortly, and that would show up as a surplus. If it was significantly lower for some reason, that could potentially generate a deficit. Then we'd have to discuss how we're going to cover the deficit. I hope that answers your question. Thank you.
Councillor Cabral, anything further? You're good?
Just whether or not the current taxpayers or residents are paying, it sounds to me like they're paying whatever the tax levy is going to be, but it's been reduced by future taxpayers. I'm just trying to get some clarification on that as well.
Sure. When we, through the chair, when we create the budget, the component that we estimate related to growth does not affect the current taxpayers at all. It is anticipating new taxpayers or growth from an existing taxpayer, but the levy-related increase is only on existing taxpayers. So that's the difference there.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cabral. Next up, I have Councillor Leduc, please. And then Councillor Fryer. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to comment that on page 22 of your budget book, it kind of reiterates what Councillor Cabral was actually speaking about. We start at, in 2022, 2023, we started 186 million. And we have all of these tax implications here, the 3%, the 2% growth, the supplementary, the assessment growth is on there and works out to be 200 million. So the increase overall in the end is quite significant to the residents of Bradford, or to all of the county. Let's put it that way, to all of the county, because it is significant. So there is room in there, and I've been arguing about that for years, that we have that in the budget, and it's a very significant increase when you look at it. It's not 3.5; it works out to be a little bit more than that. So it's in the budget on page 22. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Leduc. We'll move on to Councillor Fryer, please.
Thank you, Chair. And I was reflecting on, I can recall the work a couple of terms ago in regards to working with the ratios. And one of the reasons that it was done was to try to provide some stability in the case of where we might see major changes by the government. And I think we're going to get some reward from that planning with what's coming up. The likelihood, according to the presentation, is that the government may make some changes to the ratio limits, and it doesn't sound like we're going to have any problem with that. The bigger concern is the COVID-led not having the CVA adjustment done for now. It's going to be 3 years. So it was just a question through to Mr. Freeze. If is it known, when will we know for certain that the government will make adjustment and make it for the 2024 taxation period?
Through you, Chair. Thanks for the question. So right now, the legislation was updated to state that to require taxes be billed in 2022 and 2023 on our old base CDA of January 1st, 2016. The current cycle technically includes 2024. That legislation hasn't changed. So they have to do something this year, or we would be taxing on January 1st, 2019 values, which MPAC doesn't have anymore. So we should hear something this spring. I think a lot of people are guessing that it's going to be a 2025 taxation year restart with perhaps a 2024 valuation date. So that's probably the best guess. They've left it so long now. My position is they have to restart it. This is not I know the province sold it as a stability measure, but the underlying market changes are still going on. So I hope they restart sooner rather than later.
Just to follow up, just a comment really. As I said, it was COVID led and everybody understood it. After that, it was politically led because they didn't want to have it going through when they had their own elections going on. And now you're talking as if, and I think you're probably correct, that we're looking at 2024 valuations will have to be done and effective for 2025. The only thing I'm going to say is it's really imperative the government gets the information to the municipalities as soon as they can when that does happen, because there's going to be a lot of education that we're going to have to do to the public to make them understand the significant changes, especially in our area where we've seen the growth of housing pricing skyrocket over the last 5 years. So again, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fryer. And from the number of nodding heads, I think a lot of us are in the same position for the next 2 years. So move on to Councillor Dolan, please.
Thank you, Mr. Freeze, and thank you for your advice many years ago to bring that multi-res closer to the single family. And I want to just say that I'm on board with Councillor Fryer and others when we're advocating heavily to the provincial government to move forward with reassessment as soon as possible. And also on the issue with the education for the residents. There is a really good MPAC video. It's about 2.5 minutes long, and it's one of those ones where people are where you see the drawings, and it kind of explains the whole how it works, so that people don't open up their tax bill and think, okay, so my assessment's gone up by 100%. That means my taxes are going to go up by 100%. So I think it's, and I believe, it's my opinion that part of the reason that reassessment is being stalled is because that some of the MPPs don't understand the whole concept as well. So and the fear is that the closer we get to the next election it is more difficult for them to enter into this territory. But after that, I just have one question. So after the 2016 assessment, there was significant pressure from the agricultural community to go below 0.25. And we didn't, but I just wondered if you know, Mr. Freeze, how many counties did lower the agricultural ratio? Approximately.
Through you, Chair, thank you for the question. I don't have an exact count. I can give you some insight into that. Number one, the market research we've done and with sales in your area suggests that that's plateaued, which is good. We may not have that big discrepancy with farm on go forward. So that's an aside. A few did. I will tell you that the ones I was involved with did it as a gesture more than as a mathematical necessity, that they said, yeah, we just want to show our support. So they did a small change because they already are assessed on a different system and valued lower. So, I don't know, in your area, 2 or 3, like Gray made a marginal change. Who else? Lambton made a marginal change, but for the most part, there wasn't a lot of changes to that, and it became very difficult in places that are very farm intensive, like a Perth or a Huron. They have just massive. You're mostly res, they're mostly farm. When we look at their distribution, they're massively farm, so they just couldn't afford to do it. So,
Councillor Dolan, anything further? We're good. Your worship, please.
Yeah, through to Mr. Freeze, are we any closer to Impact actually recognizing the difference between farmers and developers that own farmland? And even though it may be rented out, like I don't like this tenant farmer where, and I mean, I have a few farms. I show my OFA card that I rent and they get the reduction, but they're not farmers and they shouldn't be getting the reduction. Certainly not at the rent they're charging. So are we any closer to fixing that ratio and recognizing, okay, bona fide farmers get the rate. If you are not, you do not.
Through you, Chair. As some of you may know, the other, aside from the tax policy, we also do some work with the county on assessment-based management. And that's one of the things we're always looking for is farmland being treated properly? Has it gone into, and as soon as there's, you know, the real opportunity to make a change in that is when it goes to farmland awaiting development. And what that means is as soon as a plan of subdivision is put on it, then we're looking to move that into farmland awaiting development, which is also taxed at a discounted rate, but it goes on the full land table. So the values are completely different. And that's the hidden thing between farm and res that we often don't see on the surface, is that the values are lower in farm often. You know, not necessarily all the time, but they are often lower. So when we move those properties to a residential land table and value its development potential, now your subclass discount for farmland awaiting development, I believe, I don't have it in front of me, I believe it's 0.25. You could start moving that up by 10 points a year. So you could move it to 0.35, 45, 55, 65, up to 0.75. And so that farmland awaiting development, and this is what we call a phase one, when that's plan of subdivisions on, you would be getting a higher value and a higher tax rate. So that is an option for you. I'd have to confirm where you're at. I could take a quick look. I'm not, I don't have it in front of me, but yeah, you could adjust that upwards. That would be the only choice you have to tax actively farming land, and that farmland awaiting development does have to have an active tenant farmer on it, but you could tax it higher than 0.25. So it's an option for you.
Thank you, Mr. Freeze. Warden Clark, anything further?
I would like to see a report on that actually, and then maybe we could start working towards that.
General Manager Wilcock, can you speak to that?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. Certainly we can do that. We will take that as an item to follow up on. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Warden Clark. Perfect. Any other comments, questions before I go to the vote? Just look at my second screen. Fair enough. And I will read out the item. That item, CCW 2023-069, dated February 28th, 2023, regarding property tax ratios and tax rates be received, and that subject to deliberations in the affirmative, that the 2023 tax ratios and tax rate reduction for 2023 as generally outlined in the subject item be approved, and that necessary bylaw be presented to adopt the 2023 tax ratios and rates as generally outlined in the item CCW 2023-069. All those in favor, please. Those opposed? Thank you. The motion is carried. Mr. Freeze, thank you very much for coming in this morning. A pleasure to listen to your presentation. And I believe, I know that in Township of Tiny, you're going to be making a presentation to our council, and I look forward to getting more information on the grassroots level. Thank you again for your time and have a great day.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye now. Okay, moving on to item 13.3, CCW 2023-075, 2023 County of Simcoe budget follow-up items, fairly large report. I look for a mover for consideration, please. Councillor Laux. Seconder, please. Councillor Smith, thank you. Comments and questions? Sure, there'll be a few here. Don't see anything at this time. Councillor Leduc, please.
All right, so this report came because of my ask at the budget, and I will start out by saying I'm extremely disappointed. The report brings nothing other than what was already in the budget book. Those answers I already knew. This report kind of tells me that, you know what, we're going to produce a budget book and you're not going to take anything out of it. This is the way we're going to do the budget, and that's all there is to it. So I can't believe that we can put that on the table and come back with the same answers that I already knew was in the budget book. When I look at the budget book, it's extremely tough to deal with here. And I got to tell you, there's got to be something to come out of this budget. There's many areas in here that I talked about a long time ago, and I don't believe we have enough time to deal with the budget. When I do my budget in Bradford, and we just went through it last Thursday and Friday, we put over 16 hours into dealing with it, our budget, 16 hours. We don't do that here at the county. And the county's a $200 million levy, tax levy budget. So I can't believe that the staff didn't come back with one recommendation to say that, by the way, you know what, I think we can take this out. Because I look at the waste management. And I look at the request for, it was a $900,000 request for large bins that we had just transferred to. And I can tell you right now, the report inside, and I can only go what's in the book. I can only go with what they give me in the book. And the book had said that the reason we were asking for that kind of money was because of growth and other areas, repairs, and buying new bins for replacement bins. Well, I can tell you back in last year, we bought new bins. We bought 15% new bins, and there was only an exchange rate of 5%, from what I understand, from if I recall what General Manager Wilcox, not General Manager Wilcox, but Director McCullough said, we only had a 5 to 6% uptake on exchange. So that would tell me that I have been sitting there waiting to be used. Any new growth in the county is actually already in your, when you buy the house, you're already paying for those bins. So there's no reason to have 300,000 towards new bins. So there was lots of areas in here that I thought we could look at and remove. And I didn't get, in the bottom of this report, I didn't get a sense of where these monies were coming from. We had charts at the bottom, every one, but it didn't actually give me a chart at the bottom that says, you know what, if we did this, we would have maybe saved 3/4 a point, maybe half a point. It didn't give us a full understanding of where that money was coming from. You have to go chart by chart to do that, but just disappointed. And I think if we're going to create this book, we got to be able to take something out of it at times, because I'll tell you, I've been here 9 years now, 2 times in 9 years. Once I took out $15,000 and it was frowned upon. And the other time was when we took out the WSIB payments that had been reduced by the province of Ontario. So it happened to save us a few funds. I know that we have went with a 0% increase in the pandemic, like everybody else. It was common with everybody else. We went with a 1% at an election year, but we've never actually reduced the budget overall. My suggestion, if we're not going to do anything with this book, don't print it. Just keep it and save the $5,000 it costs to print the book. And let's go to KPMG and have KPMG do an audit on a department. If we want to look at finding some savings, let's have KPMG come in and do an audit on a department to see if there is some potential savings there. As lean as we want to go, I can't understand how it come in a budget where they want 8 pickup trucks in 1 year. Out of one department, 8 pickup trucks with 10 total. It'll be a total of 10 pickups. There's 5 now, and they want to put 5 more in there. And they were going to replace, out of the 5 there, we're going to replace 3. That means 8 pickup trucks in 1 year. And we're going to have that same scenario when it comes to whatever the replacement date is on those pickup trucks. We're going to have 8 pickup trucks again. Doesn't make sense. I think we need to make some changes. And I would like to see us, I'm going to put an amendment on the floor to actually ask for us to County Council to support KMPG to overlook a department and do an audit on a department. Because even though you get an audit done on your county, if there's nothing in that audit, it's just a brief look at it. It's not an actual in-depth dig. So I would like to see us do something where we find some savings, because there's no way. I do a little less budget than that, and we pay quite a bit to the county when it comes to services. We pay 11% of this special or this levy, and I think we need to find some ways to pull some savings out. So those are my comments. I know that I was disappointed with the report, and I don't think there was anything there for us to pull out. So sad.
Okay, thanks, Councilor Leduc, for your comments. I'll go to your worship, Warden Clark, please.
Thank you. I'm going to have to challenge some of your comments there, James. Like when you say you took 15,000 out, it was frowned upon. Absolutely not. If you brought a motion and it was carried, it wasn't frowned upon. It was supported. We have reduced the budget in half. We've dropped it to 1% on numerous years as we've gone through the budget. I've witnessed that. I've been here and I've seen us do that. I think the book itself is very detailed. and there's good justification for even the purchases. I'm not going to get into the individual fleet, why we buy 8 trucks in 1 year. Our fleet is pretty lean. It happens at Ramara Township sometimes too. 2 or 3 trucks wear out at the same time. It doesn't mean even when you buy 8 in 1 year, doesn't mean you're going to replace all 8 in future years. So that's the idea of having a fleet manager, and you manage those assets. And certainly in Ramara Township, as we do here in county, these assets are traded around. If you got a low miler, you move it to a high mileage job and you wear it out so that it wears out evenly. I trust the staff to do that. So some of your comments are out of line, sir, and I have to call you on that. If you are looking for a separate motion, certainly something we could table. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, I'll go to Councillor Leduc, then Councillor Dolan.
Yeah, so I will provide an amendment then, if that's okay, so that the report be received and that county council support KPMG or Deloitte going out to tender for a audit firm to oversee one department, to see if they can find savings in one department. Thank you.
Okay, just before I get to Councillor Dolan, I just want to make sure the clerk is up to speed on the amendment.
Mr. Chair, I'll just craft that motion and I'll bring it forward to you.
Great. Okay, thank you. Councillor Dolan, please.
Thank you. I'm going to start with the fact that I would ask the clerk, is that an amendment? That seems to be a notice of motion from my thoughts, because is it germane to, and choosing particularly, I don't understand how Councillor Leduc can just hand pick what company he wants to do it. Isn't there procurement policies that would not allow for something like that?
So through the chair, agreed, it's not an amendment, it is a motion. We do have a staff report before you, so I believe asking for an audit, a financial audit, would be germane. That's my recommendation. It is up to the chair and obviously committee to accept that. And if not, then you would deny the motion. So once I have the motion crafted, I'll present it, and then the chair and committee can rule on that.
Okay. Anything further, Councillor Dolan? Sorry.
I do, if you don't mind, I do.
Please,
so
please go ahead.
I struggle a bit with the lack of respect shown to the staff, GM Wilcox and his team. Every municipality, I guess, must do it different, because I mean, you can play games and you can leave, come in with a higher number and then, leave it up to council to try to pick things that they want to take out to make them look good. Or you can have staff do their job, which is to come to do all that heavy lifting before it comes to the council table. I'll give you an example. In Innisfil, we gave direction to come in lean, and it was so lean, too lean, the council ended up adding stuff, not taking stuff out, because there were basics that were taken out in order to satisfy the number that council was looking for. So there's different ways of doing the budget, but in this case, I think that the fact that there's a lot of moving parts, and to suggest that, as you did the day of the budget, Councillor Leduc, that if you took out this, it was going to save that much money on the tax levy, where there's you don't have that information. You don't know whether that's flow through money from the province. You don't know whether that's coming out of a special reserve. So it's to try to simplify it to that, I think is irresponsible. And I stand by the report from staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dolan. Just speakers list, just so you're aware, I've got Councillor Cabral, Belanger, Norris, and Bell moving forward. So we'll start with Councillor Cabral, please.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Chair. Just a couple of comments, actually. In as much as I think staff do a wonderful job in all of our municipalities, I have to say that the way we approach our budgets is going to be different in every municipality. So to say that, you know, the reflection from one particular member of council's municipality as it applies to another, I think that's a bit unfair. However, having said that, the comments I wanted to make were that back at the budget council meeting, I will admit, I think there were some councillors there, including myself, that were maybe a little bit apprehensive to speak out. It was a fairly substantial number of newer councillors. And I kind of was dismayed a bit because someone on council who had been there before, who had an opportunity to go over the budget at length, did make some comments and did provide some level or measure of potential savings that we didn't even turn around and have an opportunity to discuss it. So, you know, that's part and partial my own fault for not speaking out. However, on this particular report, I think what I find, and it's not just something specific to county, it's probably specific to every municipality, is quite often staff will ask for a new hire and it seemingly just comes out of nowhere. And then it's based on population increase or service increase. If we add new roads, we can justify a new plow. But sometimes when you're saying it's just based on population increase, it's a little bit tough. And I would very much encourage staff going forward to have some more data-based, data-driven specifics when they're looking for additional staff for a particular department. I struggle with we're busier or we want to provide this, that, or the other thing. It's a little bit better if it's something that I can quantify. So that would be my comments on it. And I do appreciate Mr. Leduc bringing these forward because it does open up an opportunity for discussion. Certainly not to malign staff in any way, shape, or form. From what I hear, they've been doing a fantastic job, and I haven't been sitting on council, but that's coming from folks who have. But I think there's always an opportunity to do a review. So those are just my comments, and I appreciate the opportunity to make them.
Thank you, Councillor Cabral. Councillor Belanger, please.
Yes, thank you. Through the chair, is first of all, being passionate about saving our residents' taxes is I'm okay with that. I think that there's always opportunity, and after the budget is passed, I certainly hope that staff continue to look for new opportunities to come in under budget. With that said, I've also had quite a bit of experience with consultants. And before I would support something, I would like to have some kind of understanding as what would be the anticipated cost of this review and how much savings would have to be found to even pay for the consultant, because I've certainly had some experience where the consultant does the best on one of these deals versus what we would save in actual cost. Those are my comments. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Councillor Belanger. Councillor Norris, please.
Thank you, Councillor Evans. I'll stand right behind staff. I thought the budget was excellent. It's unfortunate, you know, there was questions raised about this. I find it a little disheartening when my fellow councillor turns around and says he already knew that was already written in the budget. This was the total waste of time on staff's behalf. I'm looking forward to the, you know, if we want to turn around and this council set the actual, what you want as an increase or zero, that should be done in whether it's August or whatever. I don't believe it's up to this council to turn around nickel dime and question. I mean, we can question staff on certain things, but to turn around and question, you know, 5 trucks, I'm not interested. Definitely, maybe at our own local municipality, we can do that. But I'll tell you, either you turn around and you say you want to cut 3/4 or a half or whatever point, that's up to staff. That's what we hire these individuals to do. So anyhow, I stand behind the staff's presentation. Well done. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Norris. Councillor Bell, please.
Thank you very much. I think my comments are much in line with everybody else's. I think that I was quite surprised by Councillor Leduc, but I do understand his passion to try and save money. I know that his area is definitely struggling, as we all are. But I do believe that the staff have done a fantastic job. And I think I love it when we have a proactive staff that come to us with the cuts already that they know we're probably going to be looking at. And I do think that we need to move forward with this, and we're here to govern. And I agree with Councillor Norris that we're here to suggest if we need to save a point, then we have to let them be creative and figure out how it's going to work in their departments. There may be somewhere else that they could cut, but if that's at their forefront, we should respect that and support them. And again, I do get that passion, and I was a little bit taken back by how it came out, and I don't necessarily think that's the way. And I hope that Councillor Duke didn't mean offense to our staff, because they do a great job, and we do need to support them. So I would support this. And we're talking about saving money. I always have a hard time with spending money on reports. I don't know if the value is there, and I guess I would have to see what kind of a savings we would actually realize if we were to pay somebody more money that's going to cost our taxpayers more. I sometimes think this is just a bit of a waste of time and money in that sense. But those are my comments. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Bell. Appreciate that. Further comments, anybody? I'll weigh in this myself. First of all, I appreciate Councillor Duke's passion for saving money, and I appreciate his passion for constituents of Simcoe County, and we need that, and I appreciate his passion for it. At this time, though, the budget is passed. I realize that there was a lot of comments in there that Councillor Duke has made, but it's in my direction, and the way we work in our township as we're discussing this. We provide direction. We don't go in after the fact and question and try and figure out where and what and why things happen. That's why we put the right people in place, and I believe we have the right people in place on the county level, and I certainly do in my township as well. And I'm going to let them do their job. If we don't do the job, then we make changes and we put the right people in. Councillor Duke, getting back to you though, I think you've got some good ideas there. And why don't we provide direction for the budget of next year to be able to look at things differently and to move forward on that. And I think that it's unfair to go to staff and to have to respond to comments. They work on our behalf, and we provide. We're here to give them direction, and I'd be very open to discussing any specific motions for consideration for next year's budget. A couple more comments. Councillor Sandu, Councillor Leduc. Let me give you the opportunity first off just to respond and to my comments, and then we'll go to Councillor Sandu and Councillor Cotton.
Yeah, no, I'm not responding to anybody. I was just going to put my amendment on, but I'll wait for others to put their final comments on, and I will I'll put my amendment on the floor if you don't mind.
Great. Thanks very much. Appreciate it. Councillor Sandu, please.
Thank you. And I just have a brief comment. And I don't question the staff's integrity or their work ethics. I think from my short dealings that I have with the staff, I think they do a wonderful job, and no one wakes up to come to work and say, I'm going to do a bad job. But I think some of the comments I heard it kind of bothered me. It is our job to question every cent and a penny as elected representatives. We're not here to rubber stamp any budgets. So if someone's thinking that we're here to do that, at least I'm not. I will question when I have to question. What I was hoping from this report was that we raised, or it was a council member raised a question at our budget meeting and said, at least look at these positions. Being a difficult year for all of us, all of the municipalities, not just in Simcoe County, throughout Ontario, if not Canada. Some municipalities are in double digits. I think the intent of the ask was, can you look at some of these purchases or positions and see if we can put it off for a year to get a little bit of a break and then come back? It wasn't a question, in my mind, at least what I think, that staff is just trying to put a fast one by us. I don't think the intent is that. It was just to have a look at it And I thought honestly, they would come back with one or two and say, yeah, these we must put forward, but one or two of these, we can wait till next year. But that did not happen. It is what it is. But I don't think questioning the staff or the budget, there's nothing wrong with it. That's our job as county councillors. If we were just gonna go with a binder and a report coming from staff, then none of us need to be here. Staff can make the decisions. We're put in this place for a reason. And that doesn't mean, and please, with all due respect, I'm not saying anything negative against the staff. I respect them, but if there's a question that I would have to ask them, I will ask them without any hesitation. And I will continue to do that in future too.
Okay, great. Thanks, Councillor Sandhu. Councillor Cotton, please. Oh, just before, Councillor Cotton, just before you start, just I know there's a number of people putting their hands up, and I do, if I see your hand, I put my hand up just so you know that I've seen you, just so you're aware. That's a tiny thing. But I've got Councillor Cotton, Leduc, Clark, and Miskimins on the roll right now. So sorry about that, Councillor Cotton. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We got to believe and trust in the staff. I think we have tools in the toolbox that maybe something can comment from staff, because I know under asset management, I think probably what is required is identified already. It's just understanding that, and then the procurement policies associated with that after the fact, if they're going to move ahead. So maybe if I'm not quite sure whether a staff member can comment just on the asset management to determine what the requirements are in for capital projects or whatever acquisition of resources. I think that's fairly important before we can criticize. I think there are tools in the toolbox, and I think if somebody can comment on that, that'd be great.
General Manager Wilcox.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Councillor. Yes, I'd like to take a moment to just make a couple of comments. The budget was put together with direction from the prior council. The prior council gave us a range to come within, a 3 to 5% range. We came within the bottom part of that range, and we did that by creating a budget that was based upon the absolute needs that we needed for this year to meet the service levels and the anticipated challenges that we have. This is not a padded budget. There is no extras in here. There is not wants. There is needs. That is the way that we put together the budget, and that's why when we're coming through, now we did make a couple of changes. Just to remind council, there was a change related to Bill 23. There was a planner that was removed that was originally put into the budget. There was also a change made with hiring of one of the people related to housing because we're going to delay that project. So there were a couple of changes that were made, but the budget was very tight in terms of how we put this together. So it wasn't like there was a whole lot of padding that we could go into to remove things. And we were proud that we came within the guidelines and at about half the rate of inflation, as I said previously, in line with the guidance that the Bank of Canada was really advocating in terms of trying to minimize the spend. So as far as that, and compared to other regions and other municipalities in this area, I think we've done a good job in terms of coming in that area. Councillor, to your specific point, in terms of asset management, we do have a full asset management plan. In terms of fleet specific, we have our fleet manager that looks at all of the vehicles and assesses whether or not we need those. We have had challenges because of the cost of there has been escalating costs, and we've really tried to minimize the amount of expense that we've had. In fact, we delayed purchasing one of the vehicles last year, even though it was budgeted. We didn't want to go over budget, so we delayed purchasing that till this year hoping that prices would actually level off. So we've done that. We have seen a little bit of that on the construction side, but some of the other costs have still continued to go up. So we are challenged, and we will manage that through the year. Where we can, we will procure to reduce that. If we do have challenges in terms of costs escalating, I can tell you already, we've seen that in some of the vehicles, and we're probably going to be bringing a report to council in terms of potential overages there. As per our procurement policy, we will bring that forward to keep you aware of those things as they occur. Thank you.
Thank you, General Manager Wilcox. Councillor Cotton, any follow-up? We're good?
No, I'm good, Mr. Chair. Thanks.
Okay. No, thank you. Thank you. Councillor, do I have you on next, or would you like to wait till all the comments are done? Please, up to you.
No, it's fine. I should put my amendment to the motion on the floor. So
okay,
moved by myself and seconded by whoever, that the audit firm be engaged, that an audit firm be engaged to review one county department to see if savings of the 2023 budget can be determined. My reason for this is to find, I know we do lean management. I'm not here to pick on staff. I've got thick skin. I'm not worried about what you say and how, you think I'm aggressive or whatever. This is budgets, and this is our fiduciary responsibility to be as lean as possible, to look for ways to find savings. As much as it's tough out there, and I appreciate the fact, I support the 1.5% special capital levy to fund our capital. Not a problem. I'm in favor of that. There's areas of the budget I'm certainly in favor of. There's other areas I put on the floor that I'm not in favor of. And it's the budget process that I'm trying to argue about, because in the end, I don't care what the past council put on the table. They recommended that budget, but that doesn't mean I supported it. And we have a new council now. And whatever this new council supports, then that should be put forward. But you haven't had the chance to put that forward. They've followed the old council to say this is what the old council endorsed. That's not the way it should be done. This is a budget for 2023 for this council to endorse. Now, many of you said you endorse it. That's fine. I'm only one vote of 32 people. I asked to review some numbers in the budget. And so if I picked on some things that people are going to take a little offense to, so be it. Love you all anyways. Not too worried about that. My amendment's on the floor to say we need to do a review to make sure that we are actually getting our best bang for our dollar. We've done the regional government review in the past, and the government gave us funds to try and find savings. And this is one of the things I'd like to do, is actually find out if the departments are actually running as lean as they say they are. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Duke. So in consideration of the motion that Councillor Duke has put forwarded by himself, do we have a seconder?
Second it.
Seconded by Councillor Cabral.
Chair Evans.
I'll defer here to the clerk at this moment. Yes.
Yeah, Councillor Dolan did ask whether or not the motion was germane. And I think it's appropriate that you rule on the decision whether or not, or on the question whether or not the motion is germane, and then proceed from there.
Good question. Councillor Leduc?
I find it difficult to not believe it would be germane to the conversation, because we're talking about budget, we were talking about savings, and this is asking to say, instead of my original request going through for finding savings, I'm asking that we search further to see if there's an opportunity for us to do an audit of a department just to see that we are lean. That's all. So I can't understand why it wouldn't be germane to this report.
I don't have, personally, Councillor Duke, I don't have a problem with a motion to look at a specific department as per direction. I do have an issue though with your motion does identify a specific action. Well, you said KPMG, did you not? You are identifying somebody already. My motion reads that,
I'm sorry, Chair, my motion reads that an audit firm be engaged. I don't say which audit firm. I talked about a couple in my brief statement, but I'm not saying that. I'm saying go out, look for an audit firm to do a review of a department. That's all.
Okay. An audit firm. I would frankly, no, I wouldn't support that. Again, I think that's prescribing action. The direction should be, I have no problem with looking at a specific department to identify if there's further savings to be needed, but we should be letting our staff determine how and where they can find this and how they figure out that there may be savings. And if there's not, then we can go back again. But I'm reluctant to say this is how you're going to do it. I'd rather let them be the ones to come back to us and say, this is how we did it.
Chair Evans, if I may, I still believe you need to rule on whether or not the motion is germane, and then allow the debate to roll out on whether or not there's further amendments to the main motion.
Okay.
So first, you just need to rule on whether or not the motion is germane.
The motion is not considered germane for this current discussion. No.
Okay, so the committee members, you've just told the committee members that the main motion on the floor is not germane, and you've made a ruling on that. Members are eligible to challenge that if they so see fit. Otherwise, you can proceed with your meeting.
Okay. Leave the floor open for discussion. I've got Warden Clark, Councillor Dolan, and Councillor Leduc to start off.
Can I just, let's talk now. I'll pull my amendment off the floor. Thank you. I'm just gonna pull it off. We can stop. We can save the discussion.
Great. Thanks, Councillor Duke. Appreciate that. Any further comments?
Well, just, if I may, Mr. Chairman, you'd already made a ruling on that. So my comments are on the main motion that was on the floor that, yes, we can change the budget as it goes forward. These were the items that we're asking for more detail on. We have it here. Is there any extra information council members want? I read through each and every one of them, and I support each and every one of the purchases that have been put here based on the information I'm looking at. Some of them don't even affect the budget as far, if the money's coming out of reserve, sometimes fleet purchasing, $80,000 to replace a truck. If there's money in a reserve, it's not an $80,000 bottom line. That's what we're looking for in this report. So I was trying to draw the committee back to the report. Each of the issues, is there one or two that this council would like to remove? That's why the report's here today. And I stand by all of them, especially after reading the information. I think there was a recommendation on one of the full-time equivalents that they would be phased in instead of the full year salary. It would come in at 50% if they were going to be hired in like June or July. So that's all I wanted to do, Mr. Chair, is bring it back to discussion on the report. If there's any one of these issues or items that a council member wants to support removing, or if they're looking for more information.
Okay, thank you, Warden Clark. I did have Councillor Miskimins and then Councillor Dolan. Miskimins, sorry, was from the previous discussion.
That's okay. I will remove myself. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think the conversation has finished on that amendment. Thank you.
Great. Thanks for comment. Councillor Dolan, please.
Likewise, Mr. Chair.
Okay, good. So I'll put it up for before I read the motion. Are there any further comments, questions, any items that anybody like to pull for further discussion? I'm just looking on my two screens here. Councillor Fryer, please.
Just comment after listening to everything. Since the motion's been pulled out, or the amendment's been pulled off the floor, it took some of my concern away. But I felt all along I supported the idea of deferment that Councillor Duke put on the floor. And because that wasn't supported by county council, I voted against the budget, because really I just didn't feel I'd had time to fully consider it. I looked at this report. Staff's gone through it. I really don't see why we couldn't have had that discussion back a few weeks ago, and maybe we wouldn't have got to this point. But I was aware of the fact that previous council set some limits. I was accepting that in particular to this budget, and looking towards the next budget as the one that I will start to get into things in a more significant way, recognizing that as Councillor Duke points out, we're responsible. It's fine that previous council set some limits, but we still have to do our job. And I just didn't see where time was going to allow it. And I do have every faith in our staff for giving us as good a direction as they can. And so I just, as I said, I wanted to make comment because I had opposed the budget, and I just wanted to make sure that I was clear to everybody on why I'd done that. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Fryer. Any further discussion, comments? Okay, the motion on the floor for vote is that item CCW 2023-075 dated February 28th, 2023, regarding the 2023 County of Simcoe budget follow-up items be received. All those in favor? Those opposed? The motion is carried. Thank you very much. And thank you for the good discussion. I'm sure next year we'll have some more direction for staff and when we get into the budget, and I'll look for some more lively discussion. That was good. I will move on to item 14, performance management, procurement, fleet and property. The first item, 14.1, CCW 2023-076, acquisition of land by the County of Simcoe from the Township of Springwater for a paramedic services post. Can I have a mover for discussion, please, on the floor? Councillor Lawson, seconded by Councillor Bill. Thank you. Any comments or questions? Chance to read. I just had a general question, General Manager Wilcox. I see that there's there's obviously a space for the paramedic station, and that there's a fire station going next door. When would the fire station be built, or is that even planned for moving forward?
Through the chair, I'm not sure of the timing for Springwater. In terms of it's their fire station. I'm not sure if I have looking to see if I have anybody.
Deputy Warden's on the who could probably provide some background. Please, Deputy Warden.
Yes, thank you. And through you, Chair, I guess to you as well. We actually are just receiving tender, so we are not as far along as we'd hoped to be with the project, but it will probably be in tandem with your build or the county build. So county build might even be before us, but they're not part and parcel to each other. They're completely separate.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Any other comments, questions? Okay, I'll read the motion. That item CCW 2023-076 dated February 28th, 2023 regarding the acquisition of land from the Township of Springwater for the purposes of a paramedic post be received, and that staff complete the acquisition of approximately 0.4 acres of land from the Township of Springwater's vacant lands municipally known as part of 1132 Snow Valley Road, Springwater, for the purpose of a new paramedic post build, and that the warden and county clerk execute any and all documentation required to complete the acquisition of land from the Township of Springwater in accordance with the real estate policy EFP 2022-02. All those in favor, please. Are those opposed? Thank you very much. The motion is carried. Section 15, any other matters for consideration to bring up at this time? I'll just scroll around. And on that absence, I will pass it back to Warden Park, please.
There we are. Thank you, Councillor Evans. A nice job. Budget and waste management are always entertaining discussions, to say the least, as people are very concerned in both those issues. So with that, we have no closed session, so I'll look for a motion to adjourn. And we reconvene. We'll be back here March 14th, I believe it is, for combined council and committee again, which is March 14th. So a motion to adjourn moved by Councillor Measures, second by Councillor Norris. And we will now adjourn at, what time do I have here? Gotta find something with a clock. Okay, it's 11:33. All in favor? That is carried. Thanks, everybody.